That's nightly news for this Thursday from Tokyo. Be sure to catch opening ceremony hosted by Savannah Guthrie and Mike Tirico tomorrow morning right here on NBC. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
How many of you leave reviews for businesses online? It's something a lot of people do. Well, I'm sure you never thought giving a company 1 star on Google could lead to that company suing you for a bunch of money.
I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford to pay $112,000.
But the business has a different take on the whole situation.
My client is not suing one of its customers for leaving a bad review. That's not what's going on here.
YouTube is cracking down on misinformation, specifically false claims about COVID-19 that people shared during a Vancouver school board meeting. Here's the story.
All right. Hello. Thank you for being with us. Many of you are probably thinking, wow, that was a brave choice by NBC Nightly News to basically feature Grant McComey for most of the time. That was actually a little technical snafu. Look, they got the Olympics going on, messes with the scheduling a little bit. It's a one-time thing. You're not going to be dealing with the nightly news problem on a nightly basis, but that was something that happened tonight. Our apologies. But if you want to watch nightly news, you can still find the full episode on their website. Check it out. Hopefully after you watch this show. I'm Dan Haggerty. This is The Story. Thank you for being with us. All the ways to communicate with us at the bottom of the screen, that hashtag HeyDan. You can also email us at thestory@kgw.com. And first off, I do want to say, and I think we can all agree on this, that we have had it with these mother bleeping snakes on these mother bleeping parks. Am I right? I was nervous saying that. I was afraid I might say something accidentally different. But it's true. In Camas, Washington, police and animal control, they found snakes. 8 big snakes, pythons in Lacamas Park today. 8, not 1, not 5 or 7, 8. They're describing them as medium-sized snakes, which is relative. They think someone owned the snakes and then they dumped them in the park when they didn't want them anymore. And I'm thinking, if you own 8 snakes and then suddenly want to own 0 snakes, I feel like you had plenty of opportunities to have fewer snakes than to get to 8 and then to go 0. Anyway, animal control, they took the snakes to an animal shelter, find them new homes, hopefully. So if you're looking for a pet snake of a medium size, here you go. By the way, if you are scared of snakes and worried about going to that park, police say they extensively searched the area and they didn't find any others. But they did find Sam Jackson. He was out there, who, as you know, has absolutely had it with these snakes. Okay, let's get down to business. Let's talk seriously here. Let's talk about online reviews. Now, even if you've never written an online review, chances are you've read one, right? When you're deciding a place to eat or where to go for the evening or even who to hire. We all take them, I think, with a grain of salt, right? I mean, maybe the person who wrote the review was having a bad day. Maybe the place that they went to was having an off night. But some businesses take them pretty seriously and they don't brush off a bad review. Some businesses sue the people who write them, and in this case, for more than $100,000. But this story is a little bit more complicated than that. So take a seat, take a watch, and weigh in. Let me know what you think. Use that hashtag HeyDan. Here's Kristen Severance.
So we had water coming through the ceiling.
When Autumn Nepper and Adam Marsh's roof started to leak in their Vancouver home a few months ago, their landlord sent over executive roof services to check it out. An employee came, looked in the attic, and said there were a few spots to fix.
I asked him about a timeline about when this might get finished. He told me to call the office the next day.
Autumn said she called the office and talked with the receptionist.
She was extremely rude from the time that she answered the phone, and she refused to give me any information. She said I would have to get it from the landlord. I asked to speak with the manager, and she laughed at me. She told me I was verbally abusing her and that she was the office manager, and she hung up on me.
Then Adam said he called Executive Roof Services.
Again, she was just super rude, told me that she was the office manager, no one else I could talk to, and hung up on me.
Were you super rude? Were you guys mean to this woman?
Not any more than you would, maybe get a little frustrated with someone being super rude to you.
Autumn then wrote a 1-star Google review about the receptionist, saying the woman who answered was rude and would not give them a timeline of events.
So I was upset that I was even spoken to like that they refused to even talk to me.
Was it truthful?
Yeah, absolutely.
Adam also left a 1-star review. Then Autumn says the owner of Executive Roof Services called her.
He told me that he knew where I lived. He said he had forensics guys, and that he would gladly spend $100,000 suing me. He texted me threatening, saying that they needed to be taken down before more damages are done. I called the police immediately to file a report. The policeman called the business owner and told him he needed to stop.
They thought the officer's call was the end of it. Then the couple received demand letters telling them to take down the reviews.
We assume this is ridiculous. You're just trying to scare us into taking these reviews down. They're honest. We're not going to do that.
Autumn and Adam were then served with a lawsuit. Executive Roof Services was suing them for defamation and, quote, intentional interference with business expectancy. The couple was being sued for $112,000 and $28,000 per week.
Honestly, I cried immediately. I was terrified. I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford to pay $112,000, and I don't want to file for bankruptcy.
Do you think this man's business was hurt?
No, I don't.
David Bowser represents Executive Roof Services, or ERS.
The first thing I think your viewers need to understand is that my client is not suing one of its customers for leaving a bad review. That's not what's going on here.
Bowser said Autumn and Adam did not hire ERS. The landlord did. He said they were not entitled to the information they were requesting, a project report and timeline. Bottom line, he said they were not customers or clients of ERS.
Whether they're paying customers or not, shouldn't they be entitled to write about their experience? They said the receptionist was rude.
It depends why they did that. If they were doing it merely to express their opinion, that's what other customers have done in the past. I don't have an issue with that. ERS doesn't have an issue with that. But when you cross the line and you use this forum to cause intentional harm to a family-owned business and hurt them and their employees and their business, you've crossed the line.
How did they intentionally harm ERS? By writing about a rude receptionist?
They intentionally harmed ERS by posting 1-star reviews for the purpose of getting that report they weren't entitled to.
Bowser points to another review, a complaint filed by Adam with the Better Business Bureau, where ERS has an A+ rating. Adams filed this complaint around the same time as the Google reviews. It states, quote, the business came to do an inspection of the roof of our residence and refuses to give us any details about the findings or scheduling of repairs to us, the tenants. Bowser said this proves they wrote the reviews in order to get the report. Adam said the Better Business Bureau never posted the complaint because the couple did not hire ERS.
This document shows what their intent was and that their intent was improper.
I talked to Paul Levy about the case. He's an attorney with the Public Citizen Litigation Group in Washington, D.C. Levy said when it comes to negative reviews, as long as the reviews are truthful, the person who wrote it should be protected.
I think the business has a lot to lose by litigating that, by trying to frame this as a defamation case. The problem is that the business has the money and the couple don't.
Levy said Autumn and Adam got hit with a SLAPP lawsuit. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. SLAPPs are used to silence critics by forcing them to spend money to defend a lawsuit. Many states have laws protecting consumers from SLAPP filings. Washington state had one of the strongest anti-SLAPP laws in the country, but it was deemed unconstitutional in 2015 after the state Supreme Court ruled it violated a person's right to a jury trial. New anti-SLAPP legislation was just passed in Washington called the Uniform Public Expression Protection Act, but it does not go into effect until July 25th. Autumn and Adam were sued at the end of June. Bowser maintains this is not a SLAPP filing.
That's not what a SLAPP lawsuit is. Or a SLAPP is a motion. This is a lawsuit.
Okay.
The lawsuit asserts claims for defamation and for intentional interference with business expectancies.
So this is not trying to silence someone because of something negative they said?
Not something that they legitimately had a basis to give an opinion on.
While Levy believes the couple could win in court, they still need to pay an attorney. And when the couple set up a GoFundMe to raise money for an attorney, they were again sent cease and desist letters by the company.
I just want to be able to live my life. I just don't want my future completely destroyed by something so small. Like, this is obviously a man who is well off and can afford to do this, and I can't afford to fight it, and I think he knows that.
Okay, let's talk to Kristen for just 1 second. First of all, fascinating story, but it does seem to me that it all would have gone away if they would have just deleted those reviews. Is that true?
I mean, there was a time, where the business said, look, they sent those letters, they said take down the reviews, but the couple said this was the truth. They said these were truthful reviews and they were not going to take down something they said, happened to them.
Okay, well, what happens now?
Court. We'll see how this plays out in court.
Got it. Kristen, thank you.
You bet.
Now, let's talk about one of our favorite topics, school boards. We spent a lot of time covering them during the elections earlier this year, and now these boards are actually starting to meet and listening to a lot of the parents who show up and get to speak at these meetings. We checked out this video from last week's Vancouver Public School Board meeting and noticed something strange. In the description, they wrote, "The public comment portion of the July 13 school board meeting has been removed from this video to comply with YouTube guidelines." Well, now I'm just curious. Okay, so what happened during the board meeting that was so bad it couldn't even exist on YouTube? And I mean, that's not, that bar is a little, we got a copy though of the audio that was removed. So let's take a listen to the first speaker.
Please ensure that all students, especially some of our most vulnerable, have access to a library that is staffed by a teacher librarian.
Okay, yeah, kids should have access to libraries. I'm with you. I think most people agree with that. Doesn't seem too controversial. Let's listen to another speaker.
All right, so I'm actually here to talk about pornography.
What'd she say? Pornography? Okay. Took a little bit of a turn, and so did the rest of that meeting. In fact, that's really all the audio I think we want to play on TV here, because mostly the speakers were just spreading false claims about sex ed and critical race theory and, of course, COVID-19. I think that last point appears to be why the video was taken down, because YouTube has a specific policy against content that spreads misinformation about COVID. After that happened, the school board responded saying, in part, the board intends to review its meeting protocols, such as how community members will be instructed to give public testimony, how much time will be allowed for each speaker, and how the board will respond when speakers use profanity or interrupt the meeting. All right, let's count some vaccines. We like to do this each and every night, let you know where we stand. More than 2.52 million Oregonians have gotten at least their first dose, according to the CDC. That works out to be nearly 60% of our total population. So kids and adults and everybody, even though I know people under 12 aren't able to get the vaccine yet, but we want to give you an idea of the total population of the state and how many people are getting the vaccine. In Washington, more than 4.8 million people have gotten at least their first dose, according to the CDC. That works out to be 63% of the state's population. All right, what else should we talk about tonight? What do you think? We got climate change, maybe? Dead zones? Sounds nice. What about the Olympics? We should talk about the Olympics and everything that's going not so great, maybe? The story's going to continue with that and more right after this. Welcome back. Just looking through some questions and comments during the break. I like to address a few at the end of the show. So if you want to use that hashtag #HeyDan or send us an email, please do. In the meantime, we'd like to remind you about our Hey Help campaign. This week, we are asking you to please consider donating to Northwest Association for Blind Athletes. They help 1,900 kids and adults to play sports and get involved in other physical activity. And if you'd like to donate, it's really easy. Just open the camera on your phone, point it at that QR code that's on your screen right now, and it'll give you a link. Or you can go to kgw.com/HeyHelp. But we're calling this a micro donation drive. Give a couple bucks. Anything helps, really, no matter how small. So the Olympics is just one day away, we think. Hopefully. They might get canceled still. Probably not. Or maybe altered dramatically, or more dramatically than they've already been altered. Just tune in. Let's see if they happen. The opening ceremonies are scheduled for tomorrow as COVID continues to spread around the world and threaten the country of Japan, where less than a quarter of people are fully vaccinated, and public opposition there to the games continues to grow. Earlier this week, we spoke to former Olympian and professor at Pacific University, Jules Boykoff, who called the whole thing a cascade of calamities. But it appears those, so far, calamities have only been high hurdles. The show must go on. And it brings us to our new Olympic segment, This Is Fine. Now, let's start with this insane headline that I think would have made really big news any other year, but considering the world is in crisis, this is probably the last you'll hear of it. The director of tomorrow's opening ceremony in Tokyo was fired today over a Holocaust joke he made during a comedy show in 1998, during a skit performed on a comedy team. Now, I know most of you aren't in the TV biz, but I'll tell you, the director is a pretty important job. They decide the cameras to use and when to use them during a live event. And the opening ceremony is one of the most watched live events in the history of the human race, and they fired the director the day before. Everything is fine. Toyota. They won't be running Olympic ads in Japan. The games are that controversial there. Japan's largest car maker refusing to advertise during the games. A company spokesperson basically said they want to be sensitive to the widespread domestic concern around the spread of the COVID virus. This is Asahi Shimbun, one of the largest newspapers in Japan. They asked people what they think, if they should still host the games, and more than half of the people there said no. Only 3 in 10 said they think it's a good idea to move forward. So, Toyota, they decided to side with the people. They decided to take a stand. They pulled their advertising there in Japan. And it goes to show you it's not all about money, though, considering Toyota is still planning to run all of its Olympic ads in the U.S. and in Europe, where people aren't protesting the games heavily. It's not all about money, but I guess it's still mostly about money. And this is fine. Now, I saw this story here in the Washington Post that caught my eye. The Northern Hemisphere has a punishing heat wave infestation. All right. Matt Zaffino in the studio with me now. This is obviously very interesting because we just went through a pretty historic heat wave here in the Pacific Northwest with historically high temperatures. And Matt, I wanted to say, what's your input on this? These heat domes, as they're being branded now, are they more prevalent? Are we seeing them more right now than we have in the past globally?
Well, first of all, the Capital Weather Gang that wrote that story for the Washington Post, they know how to write a headline.
Yeah,
totally will give them that, for sure. The infestation of high-pressure systems. Some of this is really very normal. Some of it, though, is very abnormal. I mean, think about it. We set an all-time record high temperature here in Portland, right? Lytton, Canada, set an all-time record high temperature for the entire country when we were having our heat wave, when they hit 121 in BC, the town of Lytton, BC, which then, of course, burned down in a wildfire. And more recently, we have had all-time record high temperatures, not just record highs, those are pretty common, all-time record highs in Tokyo, or in Japan, in Northern Ireland, and in Turkey. And the list goes on for a lot of other kind of record temperatures as well. So let's talk about the so-called infestation, of heat domes. First of all, the heat dome itself is nothing new. The branding is new, and they have become more intense. But we've got one over the central U.S. right now. We are not under it, thankfully. We're nice and cool. So that is number one. If we spin the globe over to Europe, we've got number two, as we mentioned, over northern Europe and Ireland, setting its all-time record high temperature there. In between that one and the next one was the weather pattern that caused all of that tremendous flooding in Germany. So the problem is we get into a wave pattern like this. And I'm calling it a wave pattern because if you look at this, these are the upper level winds. So I've got the colors, It is literally a wave pattern around the hemisphere. This is classic meteorology 101, by the way. These are called Rossby waves, after Carl Rossby, the father of modern meteorology, if you want to go really get into the weeds on this. So there's number 2 of our infestation. Here's number 3. Could make an argument for another one over the Midwest, so that could be 3, that could be 4, and then finally another one here over the northern Pacific Ocean. All of these are not uncommon. We typically, and this would be considered a 4, maybe a 5 wave pattern. So we get these big waves of weather patterns all around the hemisphere. Usually there's 3 or 4. 4 considered kind of a stable pattern, which means it's not going to change a lot. If there's more than that, the atmosphere gets uncomfortable and starts moving them all around. If there's fewer than that, they can actually retrogress or back up and go backwards. So that's kind of the basic premise of how the big picture weather patterns work around the globe. So it's not unusual to get 4 of these areas of high pressure or heat domes. What is unusual is their strength and their longevity. They have been very, very strong, and they've been lasting a really long time in some cases. And when that happens, it just stays hot. Or in the case of Germany, stuck in between 2 of them, it just keeps raining and raining and raining. And we get some really severe weather because of this, because these things staying in place. So the fact that we've got 4 of these around the hemisphere, not unusual at all. But they are becoming stronger. So I'll go Capital Weather Gang on you and say it's a normal summer pattern, but on steroids, because several of these high pressure systems or heat domes are much stronger and hotter than what we're used to seeing. And they're becoming more frequent due to something called Arctic or quasi-resonant amplification. Now, that theory of Arctic amplification has been around for a long, long time, put forth by Dr. Jennifer Francis at Rutgers University, and then also Michael Mann at Penn State University. Basically, what it means is this. As the climate is warming, especially with the Arctic warming faster than the lower latitudes, you don't have as much of a fast west to east jet stream, so things get wavier. And when that happens, they tend to stay put for a longer period of time. We call that a blocking pattern. And so you can get more warm air over one area for a long time. Conversely, in the wintertime, we can get cold air coming down in one spot for a long, long time if you're on the part of the pattern where you're getting the winds coming from north to south. So part of this, yes, Dan, I totally agree with. We are seeing them become stronger and more frequent, like the one we experienced back in late June. But to say there's an infestation of them around the planet right now, that's a good headline.
So is summer on steroids.
Thank you.
I like that one.
I just came up with that.
All right, Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now, since we're talking about climate change, let's spend some time and focus on what's happening in our oceans. Not way far away either. I'm talking about close. I mean, right off the coast of Oregon and right off the coast of Washington, scientists are predicting a huge dead zone in that area. Now, we've seen this sort of thing before, but researchers say this will be bigger and closer to shore. And Keely Chalmers checks it out for us.
This is video of a dead zone taken back in 2006. It shows dead crabs littering the ocean floor off Oregon's coast and no fish to speak of. Dead zones happen when the winds create upwelling, which causes oxygen levels in the ocean to drop so low marine life can't survive. In 2006, researchers measured no oxygen in the water.
In years when summer starts early, those are the years when we see the worst hypoxic or low oxygen zones.
Oregon State University marine ecologist Dr. Francis Chan was one of those researchers. He's been tracking oxygen levels in the ocean ever since. And this spring, he predicted another dead zone this summer.
And unfortunately, we were right. Those predictions were right. And we are seeing very low dissolved oxygen waters.
Chan says this year is shaping up to be much like 2006, only much bigger and closer to shore. A recent NOAA research trip discovered a low oxygen zone stretching from northern Washington all the way down through Oregon and only about 6 miles offshore.
It followed the model projections pretty well, except that it got closer to the coast than what we expected. So it was a little more intense than we expected and certainly closer to the coast.
We're not at zero, but we're getting really, really close to zero, and it's only midsummer.
Chan predicts the oxygen levels in this region will drop even lower before summer ends.
So you're thinking by the end of the summer, could we get down to zero?
By the end of summer, if not in a few weeks.
And the closer these dead zones get to the shore, the more impact they have on our fisheries, especially the crabbing industry, which is why these researchers will continue monitoring our ocean, checking on the marine life. and tracking something they believe could be here to stay.
We're watching very closely how it expands.
One of the ways that climate change is expressed in the ocean is through the expansion of things like this low dissolved oxygen zones. So this is one of the harbingers of climate change.
Keely Chalmers, KGW News.
All right, last chance to send in some questions, comments, concerns, anything on your mind. Let us know what you're thinking. Use that hashtag HeyDan. We'll see you to finish the story right after this. All right, let's talk about some comments. We got a ton of stuff, people wondering about that first story off the top where the couple is getting sued for a negative review they gave to a company. Keep those questions and comments coming. We'll make sure Kristen gets a hold of them and finds a way to follow up on any ones that can kind of move that story forward. We appreciate your interest. Got this from Karen. Now, this is not my expertise, but I'll try to answer because I asked Matt Safino something similar. Karen said, what did heat domes used to be called? According to Matt, they were just kind of, those domes of high pressure. You've heard meteorologists say that before, right? Domes of high pressure. Heat dome is kind of a, hashtag heat dome, something that sounds good in a headline. Now, I do want to say, as far as the story is concerned, there's going to be some scheduling changes during the Olympics just because of when the Olympics airs. It's going to be during this time frame, the 6 o'clock time frame. So we are not going to be on the air for a little while. We're going to still be putting things online. So if you have questions about anything that's going on in the city or in the state, let us know, and we'll do our best to answer those things and post them online for you. And we are going to have 2 evening editions at 11 o'clock in the next 2 weeks where we kind of showcase the story to some people who typically probably don't know us or see us that often. So hopefully we see you then. Any other time you can find us online. As always, keep up the good work out there. Keep the good questions coming our way, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. That's the story for tonight. I'll see you back here when? Thursday or I don't know. Find me online. You know the hashtag.